Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to one of our expert panels, which we are now talking today. We're talking to the state of Colorado, and I'm delighted, absolutely delighted to have three experts on Colorado here. We have Liz Bertel from the Colorado Tourism Office. We have Percy Stevens from Durango, and a good friend of mine, Katie Schneider, and she's from Fort Collins. And if you don't know of either of these two places, Durango or Fort Collins, you will do after listening to this. And indeed, you'll know a bit more about Colorado through these interviews. Now, Liz, we're now in this post-pandemic world, well, almost in a post-pandemic world. People are starting to emerge from their caves, and now they've been vaccinated. Many people are saying they would like to carry on with a lot of the stuff that they've been doing through the pandemic, which is walking, taking a much more notice of wildlife, hiking, cycling. And when I was thinking about it the other day, in the United States of America, I can't think of a state that's probably more suited to that than Colorado. Is that true?
Well, thank you, Graham. That's quite a compliment coming out of this pandemic. As you said, certainly Colorado has lots of wide open spaces. If you look at the other destinations that are with me today, from Fort Collins to Durango, within just the state of Colorado, it's over a 7-hour drive in between, with lots of open space, lots of great activities to do. We have 26 scenic byways that our visitors can travel on that really gets them off the beaten path, and they can find their own adventure and then have incredible experiences in each of our destinations.
Excellent. And when you're doing all of this, I know when I've been there, and I'm sure that other people that have been there would say the same, is there's an abundance of wildlife as well. That because here, certainly all around the world, we tend to be now much more aware of our wildlife. We want to protect it, but we also want to observe it, even if it's from distance.
Sure, and that's certainly something we always want to share, is that wildlife is in abundance here in Colorado, and we like to observe and watch them from a distance. And it's always safe from your car, but not to get too close. But anytime you're in our national parks or on our scenic byways, there are elk and deer, and we have over 960 different species in the state. So lots of birding and little critters to see. It's always fun and puts a smile on a visitor's face when they run into our wildlife.
Cool. And as from a state perspective, Colorado has an increasing reputation, I think, and probably one of the forerunners. And I'm not just talking about tourism here, but about being forerunners in terms of climate change policies, in terms of making sure the state is green, taking into account environmental factors and indeed social and cultural factors as well. And that, I'm imagining, that feeds into the tourism businesses as well, don't they?
Certainly, I think that as residents of our beautiful state, we want to protect what makes it so special. And so trying to take steps very proactively on the environmental front, on our visitation front, educating visitors on our Care for Colorado principles, and just making ourselves, to be better stewards of everything that we have is something that's always in the forefront of Coloradoans.
Good. Now, Katie, Fort Collins is obviously one of the pearls in the Colorado tourism world. Tell me a bit more about what people could enjoy if and when they get to Fort Collins.
Well, there's so much to cover, but today we'll focus on a lot of our outdoor experiences. And one of the biggest draws to Fort Collins is our proximity to Rocky Mountain National Park. And Colorado as a whole is home to 4 very diverse and interesting and amazing national parks. But one of the most popular is Rocky Mountain National Park. And it's less than an hour drive from Fort Collins. So a lot of people stay in Fort Collins and then go and experience that incredible gem that we have here in the state. But I will tell you that one of the things that is a hidden gem, if you will, and one of the state scenic byways is the Cashlaputa River. And that is the state's only wild and scenic river, which means it's protected, to your point about our sustainability and conservation efforts. And so people can raft, they can kayak, we have stand-up paddle boarders, and it's a very quintessential outdoor recreation experience, but for all abilities and experience levels.
And when you talk about the national park, the Rockies National Park, is it just something you drive around, or you've mentioned about getting out and kayaking, but are there also hiking trails?
Absolutely. There are miles and miles and miles of hiking trails. I have lived here in this area my whole life, and I've barely scratched the surface. And again, for all experiences and abilities, that's something that we want to make sure people know, that it's a very approachable experience when they come to hike. But in addition to that, biking is a really amazing pastime here in Colorado. Fort Collins itself is one of the highest levels of bikeability in the United States. And so when you're here, you can bike on anything from single track mountain bike trails to your paved, wide, family-friendly biking trails as well. So that is certainly something you can expect when you visit Fort Collins.
And I think if people have never been to Colorado, they always assume that you're going to be about 1 million feet above sea level. You can hardly breathe, and every single day it snows. Well, I know that's not the case, but perhaps you can tell our listeners that that's not the case.
Absolutely. Well, and a lot of people think that we're all mountains, which we have incredible, obviously, the Rocky Mountains in our backyard, but half of the state is flat. So when you arrive, you are on flat ground, a little less in Fort Collins than a mile above sea level. So you come and get your bearings here, and then you can go into the high country and be acclimated very well.
Excellent. Now, Percy, I like the view you have out of your back window there. If that's what's going to present itself when I get to Durango, that's looking good.
It looks amazing, Graham, and thank you for having us this morning, or this afternoon for you. Yes, Durango, it's in the southwest part of Colorado, and we are at an elevation of about 6,500 feet. I think what we are famous for is that we are pretty centrally located between some very nice parks. We have the sand dunes, we have Mesa Verde, and then connected through that all is the, as Liz mentioned before, 26 scenic byways. And one that I want to point out is the $1 million highway that runs between Durango and Silverton and onward. Beautiful, I think personally, probably you hear from my accent that I'm not from here, traveled throughout the States quite a bit, but I think it's one of the most scenic drives you can find anywhere in the world. So that is by road, and then if you want to do some more exploring, you can do that by train. We have the Durango-Silverton narrow gauge railroad running between Durango and Silverton, and that is a wonderful life experience, one of a kind of experience as well. That's been around since the 1880s, and that's definitely a must-see in Durango and the surrounding areas.
Cool. Percy, what sort of accommodation and restaurants and nightlife would I expect when I come to Durango after I've done my scenic walking and I've seen a couple of grizzlies and I've seen some golden eagles and I've spotted this and that and done a bit of rafting down the rivers? What can I expect when I come to relax?
Yeah, there's a lot to see here and to experience. Since we are so far south, we have a lot of different cultures, from Mexicans to Native American to all kinds of different influences that you will find in this region. But I think one of the highlights for me personally stands out is the historic aspect of the area. And I think if you want to have a really good experience, the Schneider Hotel is one of the highlights, I think, of Durango, where you can really step back in time, where people who work there still dress up in old clothing and the dress that they used to wear back in the days. We have the General Palmer Hotel where you can enjoy a nice libation, but then we also have a lot of different modern restaurants, from craft breweries to distilleries, and to name a few. We have about 2,500 rooms in Durango, from La Quintas to Holiday Inn Express. And so if you want to do something more modern, Marriott's, you can do that, but I think if you're here and you want to experience the historic feel, then the Schneider is definitely the must-go.
Good. I like the sound of the old clothes because I'm dressed pretty much like I was in the 70s with T-shirts and jeans. Apart from the colour of my hair, it's pretty much the same, really. Liz, Percy, Katie, thank you very, very much for that. Certainly, I'm keen to get back. I imagine the people listening to this would be keen to go. It sounds a fabulous post-COVID trap. Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you very soon if I can get there.
Great.
Likewise. Thank you, Graham.
Appreciate